Hey there, Impact Zone fam. How's it going? Today we're back here to talk more TNA wrestling shenanigans as always. I want to talk about wrestler equity. Basically, I've sort of touched on this kind of idea before, but when a wrestler goes through their career, they develop a certain amount of equity in their name, in their brand, and in their career effectively. All the accomplishments, all the moments, all the things that they've kind of done in their career have stacked up to form this, like, whether you want to call it legendary sort of status or iconic level of status or Hall of Fame level of status. I don't think that everyone has that, obviously, but I do think that wrestlers do have they can have a high level of equity. There are certainly true legends, true like icons of this business that are out there, but every wrestler has this, or basically every wrestler has this. Every wrestler has an amount of equity that they're built up in over time, over the years. Look at Eric Young. Look at anyone that's been around for more than a few years. Eddie Edwards, guys like that that have been around for a while and have basically they've done everything that they could do in their career. And when you say, hey, we're going to have this guy or that guy, somebody like EC3, let's say, not to say that EC3 could never win the world title or do anything like that, but you might say, well, what would be the point, if you know what I mean? But you might also be looking at saying, okay, we're going to have a matchup between EC3 and, let's say, Mike Santana. Whatever. I don't think that makes any amount of sense right now, but let's say it could happen, okay? Right? Then you could say, okay, cool, great. Right. Well, why is that? Because normally you would be thinking, okay, if we're bringing back somebody who has a lot of equity in their name and in their brand, like EC3, then we're bringing him back to elevate some of the other stars. Not just like do stuff for him. We want to do stuff for him. That's fine. That's something else. We want to rehabilitate him. And we want him here because he's a big star and he has a lot of star power and he's a big draw. Okay, cool, great. There are multiple reasons to bring him in or to bring somebody in or whatever, whoever, doesn't matter. But again, same thing with tag teams. That's another one. But again, like same philosophy. Okay, you bring these guys in and you say, hey, the Hardys have big time name value and big time equity. So we're going to bring them in. What's the point of bringing somebody like that in? To help build up the younger or the newer superstars. Now, yes, you can obviously have them have matches with the quote-unquote current crop of stars, which I would say Mike Santana is one of those. But Mike Santana is pretty much a made man. He's already in that position of being the main event level guy. So he doesn't need that much help, but it's more or less sort of somewhat rehabilitating EC3. If you're going to do something like that, then you're trying to say, no, he's still a main event level guy, and he can still hang with the main eventers. So therefore, when he goes along and he beats up, and somebody else beats him, hey, well, now they just beat, this former world champion, and a guy who can still be in that picture and da-da-da-da. So that's going to build somebody else up later down the road. That can be the idea of that and whatever else. That's the idea of bringing these guys in to, work with the current crop. And sometimes you work with the newer crop first, but, it doesn't matter which way you kind of do it. But it matters about, like, okay, yeah, you're here, but you're not just here for we're not here for you realistically. We're here for what you bring to the table. You bring a lot to the table right now because you've got a lot of equity in you still left over from everything that they did with you all those years ago. They built you up. They had all these guys who had a lot of equity, put their equity into you so that you could get over and so that you could be a big deal. Now you've kind of been a big deal, and now it's time to say, okay, time to wind down and time for me to put my equity into somebody else and several other people if possible. Because again, that's how the business works. You have to put, your future talents and your current talents in front of your past talents. And this last week we saw like Eric Young beat EC3, which I think was a bit of a mistake, but it was like EY has had a big like losing streak and things like that for the most part. So again, it's kind of like, well, we have to rehabilitate him a little bit. We have to kind of keep him in there. We've got to kind of have this be a bit more 50-50, sort of thing. So we're not just putting EC3 over, and we're not just putting, EY into the true jobber sort of status, but he's fairly jobbery realistically. But still, he can go out there and he can wrestle and he can have good matches and he can do great things out there with the right opponents and with the right story and with the right build-up and that sort of thing. But that's the thing, you need to build these new young guys. You can say, hey, let's have this big time match between Santana and EC3. That'll be cool. People will want to see that. But obviously, you're not thinking EC3 is going to win that belt. Or even if it's like somebody else wins the world title, which I don't really know who would win it right now. But let's say somebody else wins it. And then you say, okay, well now EC3 is going to come and gonna challenge for the title. That's not for EC3 again. That's more for whomever is the champion at the time to say, hey, I beat EC3, Because again, they need more time, more equity, and more stuff put into them so that they can be the current crop, or that they can be the future stars, or what have you. You cannot just keep going and hope for people to keep tuning in to see guys who are getting older and older and older and getting less and less and less interesting and just doing the same things as what they used to do. They want to see the new things. They want to see the new people coming along. They want to see somebody, like they do want to see somebody come who's a legend or an icon, like Mickie James' last rodeo. People loved that. But again, I think that there was a big perhaps disconnect there where it was like, okay, well, where was that, what was the end of that story, you know what I mean, sort of thing, where it was like, well, who's going to dethrone Mickie and who's going to, take that belt off of her and who's going to be the new star that's been made from that, So again, like, that's something that they kind of took out, and it was kind of a really weird situation, which I think, they probably should have avoided in some regard. Like, I don't know whether you should have had, like, Jordan be heel or whatever, or maybe, like, Jordan should have lost it at some point during that run that she was on, but she was on an awesome run, to be honest. But, like, losing to another babyface is kind of a big problem there in that regard. And again, especially losing to somebody that's such a legend or whatever else it is, sort of thing, is like, yeah, like if that had been like a heel, I think a lot of people would have been a lot more like flowing with that story a lot better. And if it had been on Diana, who, Mickie had been feuding with off and on for a long period of time, and then like She'd also been feuding with Tasha Steelz off and on for a long period of time, and even lost the title to Tasha at some point there, I believe. Then it could have been like this whole thing of, another full circle kind of moment where Tasha finally sort of got in there and proved herself or whatever. But still, it doesn't really matter. But again, because shit happens, and then they decided to do whatever they decided to do after that, to reinstate the title and to go back to the drawing board, so to speak. But yeah, I do think that having somebody like that come in, they're obviously there for, the fans are obviously going to be there for them. They're happy to see them. They're going to be like, oh, cool, get to see what Mickie James is going to do on this last rodeo thing or whatever else it is. Or EC3 on this redemption thing, whatever he's doing, da-da-da. We'll get to see that. Maybe we'll get to see some cool matches between him and this person, or him and that person, or a good feud with this person. He's really got on the mic, so, we'll get some great promos in there and things like that. So that's what people were looking forward to when you're bringing in some of these stars or some of these people from the past, or even if they're from the present day or whatever else it is. Same thing, I'd say this with the New Day, but they're sort of the past, unfortunately, more so. But again, you could say, well, they're sort of a team of the now kind of thing. So obviously, there's been a lot of discussion about them going to AEW, and I won't be surprised if they're in AEW, and then I won't be surprised when they're sitting there for 5 years or whatever else it is, just enjoying nice catering, and never even basically on TV or whatever. So, or if they are, then a dozen other people that are there that are barely used won't be on TV, and they'll enjoy some nice catering, and that'll be about it. So there's always that push and pull, and it really does feel, we've seen that in the last 6 years with AEW. What was it, the other day, Brian Cage just came back after 18 months or something. It was what the F? So many guys that are there, and they have no clue what to do with them all because they've just got way too many guys. And it's just a big sinkhole for money, effectively. And we've talked about that before, so I won't go too deep into it. But again, when you're bringing in these people, unlike AEW, you've got to be well, we want to bring in some of these guys, but realistically, how many of them can we realistically bring in? Because yes, we would like to be here, we'd like to do stuff with them, but again, if we do that, then we've got to shunt somebody else out of the picture that's maybe not even getting that much time. And there's so many people that aren't getting very much time. And it's well, that's not fair to them. And it makes the divisions and everything else just look very plain and very, boring and very, there's only a handful of people here, or only a handful of real people here that are, these are the guys that we're actually invested in, or whatever else it is. We're not invested in these other people. Don't care about them. They don't exist. They never get booked, so you shouldn't give a shit about them. The titles that they have basically never get defended, so just forget about them, because we don't remember that they even exist, and we don't have any stories for them or whatever else it is. So just they're such an irrelevant thing, so just forget about them or whatever. But there's so many things that are like that. And again, that's the same thing in WWE and AEW or whatever else. I just said that for AEW kind of thing. But it has been a lot like that for everywhere. But you do your best to be okay, let's feature some of these guys. Let's feature some of these gals. A little bit of the old, a little bit of the new, a little bit of a revamp for somebody that has returned, or a fresh coat of paint, or whatever you want to say. We've got to do something different with you. The Broken Hardys thing. Okay, cool. That was
that was successful. I mean, you're going back to it again because it was successful, but also because it's like, hey, this extra dimension kind of to their characters or whatever else it is, and that sort of stuff. So again, it gives the fans more to kind of latch onto rather than, oh yeah, it's the Hardys that we knew and the yada yada yada. You know, even though you might know the Hardys from their broken universe thing or whatever else it is as well, you might be like, oh yeah, cool, we haven't seen this in a while or whatever else it is. So hey, here it is again, sort of thing. Let's have fun with that and let's see what wacky, crazy things that they come up with. You know, we haven't seen this in like a year or so, whatever it's been. So it's kind of nice to have those breaks kind of from it and be like, okay, let's take some time and do this thing for a while, and then we'll go back to it, and then, you know, we'll go back away from it, and then we'll go back to it again, or whatever. You know, it makes it more interesting when you see these shifts in vibe or in tone, depending on the story or whatever else you're trying to tell, rather than just, yes, we are the Broken Hardys, suddenly for no reason, wonderful, you know, or whatever. You know, like, okay. I mean, like, I think when Matt kind of first came back, it was like he was actually like Broken Matt, and I was like, oh, okay, you could have just come back as Matt or whatever, as the Hardys or whatever. But like, sure, I suppose it doesn't really matter all that much. But yeah, like using it more sparingly and using it more like, you know, there's sort of a story reason behind why it's there or whatever else it is. We've been pushed too far, Brother Nero. It is time to delete, you know, and things like that, you know. But again, you shouldn't be the only thing. Again, like if you've got, you know, that feud going on, it's got to not only benefit the people that are in it, it's got to benefit the whole division. And maybe you say, well, it gets eyes on the division or it gets eyes on it. Yeah, sure, that's cool. But what is it gonna do for either team or for the rest of the division? Again, that's the main storyline that you've got going on, and maybe it is to build the Hardys back into getting the titles at some point, or try to get the titles at some point. But again, I would say, well, why are we gonna do that? You know what I mean? Like they're like, you know, the whole like, we've already done that several times. Yes, it's going to be successful, but that's not always the point. The point should be to say, okay, well, how are we going to get whatever other tag teams over to that point where they can beat the Hardys, where people can feel like, no, they deserve it, you know, whatever. It doesn't really feel, like I said before, that the system have really earned anything for the most part, because they haven't really got a storyline, or there isn't a real storyline for anyone else to come and try and get those titles right now. So there's no one else being built up in that division. And again, I get that, you know, the world title is more important, but you've got to have other things going on. You can't just have everybody is in the world title division. That does not work, you know, because some people are going to be more lower card or mid card or whatever else it is. So again, and some people aren't, again, built up with enough equity in them for people to feel like, oh yeah, they could be the world champion or whatever. Especially when they're a tag team, it's like, well, maybe one of them could be the world champion, but that doesn't really make much sense because they're a tag team. So what would happen to that tag team? That really, that's a bit confusing or whatever. So yeah, like, I do feel like, though, there are some interesting kind of stories kind of cooking, but like the story around like Nick Nemeth is really weird. It's one of the weirdest stories that they've kind of got going on right now. Like, I'm not more talking about the whole Casey Navarro thing. I'm more talking about the fact that he's still the call your shot champion, and he's been saying, "Hey, I'm gonna call my shot," or whatever else it is at some point. You know, I'm so sick. I'm so sick of that being there. It's like they've completely forgotten about it. Um, and it's time to freaking well just let him call his shot. Let him call his shot. Let him have his match. Whatever else it is, and get it over and done with. I said that months ago, months and months and months ago. But dude, just have him friggin' do it, for frick's sake. Get it out of the way so that you can stop, having to forget that it's even there, and then move on with whatever stories that you're trying to tell. Because obviously you're not trying to tell that story. You're just like, oh shit, yeah, he still does have that. So, yeah, well, whatever. It's like, bro, what? And especially since he's not a heel right now, it's like, dude, like, no way he's winning it off Santana then. And there's no real reason for him to really win it off of anyone, really. I don't think. I just don't think that there's a reason for it. Honestly, I really, really don't. I really don't. I don't see the point in him holding the title again. I don't even think there was that much reason for him to hold the title in the first place. Like, really? You did some okay stuff with him, but I think you would have done better at having Josh Alexander be the world champion at that time. Because he was the main antagonist in the story, and you were trying too hard to make Nick Nemeth the babyface when everyone wanted Joe Hendry to be the babyface. So you're like, he could be another babyface, but still, like, he shouldn't have been the champion. He should have just been there and been another challenger to Josh Alexander, so that, again, he could be built up, and so that he could hold the title and it was a stopgap champion. And then you finally get back to Joe Hendry, winning the title and, all that stuff, and then go from there. So, but yeah, that's what I mean. You need to have the guys or the people that have the main story be the main focal point. You know what I mean? Or if you don't have that, then you need to give a story to whoever you think is the next, pillar of that division, or pillar of that company, or whatever else it is. Right now, like I said before, like, it doesn't feel like that anybody really has a big time story that's building them towards the title. It's just people are there and they exist. Mike Santana is there, and sometimes he has challengers. Like, before, at least Steve Maclin had some story there, and I would like them to go back to it again. Like, I keep saying it until they do it, because I want to see a fucking clean finish between those two. But yeah, like, again, it doesn't feel like maybe they will change that, but like, it hasn't really felt like anyone has a major story going. And especially not for a while. And it's like, bro, you need to already have that. You already need to have those things where people are like building towards that title, rather than just somebody wins a match, now we'll give them some story, or whatever else it is. No, you should have already had that story. You know what I mean? And not that there's none, but it hasn't really touched anything. And it's like, everybody that has something has also been beat by Santana. So yeah, and you haven't really done enough with any of them to be like, let's rebuild them, or let's make them like into that position where people can be like, no, they've beaten this person and that person, and maybe it's time to take the belt off Santana and do something else and crown somebody else, and like that sort of thing. So again, you usually have these sorts of changes happen where it's like, okay, time to do something else. even for a while, even if it's just like, Santana's going to be in that picture for a while still, and he's certainly going to be around that picture still if he continues to stay with the company at least. But yeah, he's going to be in that position for a while. But yeah, we need other guys in that position. You know, we don't need everyone in that position, but again, like we need a lot of people. We need at least a handful of people that are in that position that everyone can feel like, cool, they're at this level, they're at that level, or they're trading wins back and forth, or they're really close. So it's not just Mike Santana is our guy, so Mike Santana wins lol. It's not just the Mike Santana show. I know I like Mike Santana and everyone likes Mike Santana, but it can't be just he's the only star that we have, so we're not even going to take the time to build anybody else. That's when you have problems. You need to build other people. But yeah, guys, I get it that you get it, and I know. So, but yeah, like I say, I love to talk about wrestling. And I do appreciate you guys letting me ramble on about wrestling because I know you guys are very smart and aware of most of these things, but I do love to talk about it for those people who do not, and just for my own level of like, oh, cool, yeah, I've thought through this. Maybe people have kind of thought through this, but they haven't had it articulated to them, and they go, oh yeah, kind of knew that, and you've kind of said a lot of that same sort of thing, but hey, it is, that context sometimes of, oh yeah, haven't really thought enough about that, or whatever, so yeah, you need that sort of thing where it's like the equity that you build into someone. You're starting to put a lot of equity into someone like Leon Slater. He's starting to get into that more upper mid card, more like lower main event sort of place, or like sort of semi main event sort of place, or maybe even starting to be in that sort of somewhat main event space sometimes. So you're starting to be like, okay, let's feature this guy. Let's make him an important deal. But now the question has to become, okay, how is he going to get to that next level? Or is he going to get to that next level? I don't think it's a case of if he's going to get there. I think it's a case of when he's going to get there and how he's going to get there. That's more my opinion. But again, you've got to give him things to actually work with. If you've got no heel or unless he's going to turn heel himself, unless you've got something for him to turn heel, then, well, he hasn't got anything to work with right now. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I just don't know what you're going to do from there. And then it's like, well, once he's gone from the X Division, who's going to be the next X Division champion? Because, again, you don't have many people in that X Division. So, again, I do feel like, hey, you need to actually have... And maybe, like, again, like, you're just like, again, well, we don't care. Well, that's the fucking problem. That you, like, if you don't care, then it's like, you might as well quit wrestling and let somebody else come along and say, okay, I'm going to book this show and I'm going to make every division matter and mean something. I might get rid of, like, the international title, or I might get rid of something like that, something superfluous, so I can focus more in on the X division, or I can focus more in on the tag team division, or I can focus more in on this, or I can focus more in on that, or whatever else. Or let's say, hey, let's give the women something else to fight for. Let's give them their own X division title, or let's give them their own international title, or I don't know what you want to call it, like the beauty title, I don't know, or the OnlyFans title, I don't bloody know, but something like that, where it's like, yeah, some sort of mid-card-ish women's title that means that they have, like, and I do think, like, X Division makes a whole lot more sense, because, again, like, X Division is more of an established, like, division kind of thing, whereas, like, if you were to say this is a new digital media title kind of thing, or more of a mid-card title, more of like that international title or whatever else it is, or whatnot. Maybe what was the Grand Championship? Maybe something similar to that, but a little less like clunky, I guess, sort of thing. Or maybe like the Pure Rules Championships sort of things. That sort of things you could say, okay, let's try to do something like that. Or let's like have this like special uh X style games or whatever else it is, like the G1 climax, but for women, sort of thing. Like let's have like same thing WWE has, King of the Ring, Queen of the Ring. Like let's have something like that, Knockout of the Ring or something like that. I mean, it's a bad ripoff in a way, but like TNA really should have done it years and years ago anyway, or whatnot. Same sort of thing. Like bring in some things that would be like, okay, let's diversify things more for the women. Let's make the women just as important as the men, and make it more of a thing of saying, hey, they have more opportunities there, or saying, hey, like let's make some of these titles intergender or whatever else it is, or make intergender specific tag team or like mixed tag team titles or something like that. You could do something like that. Anything, obviously, but still, yeah, I think that there is a lot to do in those spaces of saying, let's try something else. And let's do something similar to this, or let's do something similar to that, but let's make it a little bit more like cohesive. Like WCW used to have the 3 rings or whatever, 3 rings of battle royals or whatever it was, which was like, wasn't War Games, but what was it called? I can't remember what it was called, but yeah, they had that. So just do something like that. There's a million different ideas in wrestling. Like what was it? Was it the 6-4-2-1 match or something like that? Or 4-2-1 match or whatever it was? Yeah. Whatever it was, that match. Bring that back. That was a great idea. Or bring back like timed matches and things like that, or whatever else it is. Bring back some of that sort of like you must beat the clock challenge sort of things. You must beat your opponent in 5 minutes, or you must beat your opponent as quickly as possible type challenges. Or the Bound for Glory series, do that and be like, okay, if you get a submission, you get this many points. If you get a pinfall, you get this many points. If you get disqualified, you get minus this many points. If you get counted out, you minus this many points. Whatever, all that sort of stuff. So make it like, hey, this is this series for a few months or whatever. Not just like doing that, but saying, okay, like everybody needs a story. Everyone in this needs a story. Why are we here? Why should we care? Like, right. Why should we tune in next week to see you do this or to do that or to feud with this person? It's like, we know where this is going pretty much with like Laying Lee. And it's like, yeah, we know where that's going. We might not where Zaya's going after that, but like, at least we know, okay, that's where we're going. When exactly, we don't know, but again, I wouldn't say that it'd be its anniversary, but then again, I don't know. But still, there's a lot of that sort of stuff, but we need more of, I don't know, sort of just like not clearer things, but we just need more for everybody. We can't just have there's this one person and then there's these other 2 people or whatever else it is for them to work with or whatnot, and that's about it. Great. Really need more people than that, and whether we can bring in more people isn't really the point. It's saying, well, yes, we could bring in more people, but we really need to bring up the equity of a lot of our wrestlers. So that again, like some people are injured, like Trey's injured or whatever else it is now, but still start doing stuff with him. Start saying, hey, Trey's on his way recovering and Trey's going to be back, at some point. Have him do interviews and have him talk about his injury or whatever else it is and this sort of stuff. Have him on commentary or have him do other things. Make sure people don't forget about him. But don't try to, don't bloody well, direct it to be like, oh, yes, he's coming back maybe at some point, who knows. You do want people to kind of keep it in the back of their mind that he is there and he exists and he could be back, but yeah, you don't want people to be like, oh man, he's definitely coming back next week or whatever else it is, because they started featuring his, things on the Titantron or whatever else it is. You want that to last for a few weeks. And then you want, or maybe like a couple weeks or something. Or like do it here and do it there and then be like, okay, we'll forget about it. We'll kind of forget about it or not showcase it for a little while. And then suddenly, bam, here he is. He's back. And people are like, oh, holy shit, here he is. And then you start doing more stuff with him and be like, okay, let's put you into a big push now because you're back and people are hyped to see you and, whatever. All that stuff. So, yeah. But yeah, guys, thanks so much for listening. Hope you've enjoyed. Hope you'll join me again in another one.